Hi, greetings. This is Greg Aden with Aden Leadership, welcoming you to another edition of Servant Leadership Podcast. And today, I have the great pleasure of introducing you to Zach Guerin, who is joining us here from Denver, Colorado. Zach, welcome. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me, Greg.
You. Well, first of all, we'd love to find out a little bit more about yourself. So, where are you from? How'd you get here? And tell us what you do, and then we're going to ask you some deeper question as to why you do what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I was born and raised in Colorado, actually in Boulder, and went to a preparatory high school. Also was very involved with my school on school politics and all of that fun stuff. After I graduated high school, I really didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. And so I actually moved to Colorado Springs and worked in the hospitality industry for a brief stint at the Broadmoor. And then from there, I actually went into property management. And here I am today at Foothills Regional Housing. So it's kind of a short, quick background on me.
Well, let's focus on then what you do now, and I'd be curious because a lot of people don't really understand housing. Tell us your interest in being in housing, and then tell the listeners. We're going to get back to hospitality for sure, but tell us why you picked housing or how it picked you, and then what do you actually do there at Foothills?
Yep. So I'll start with what I do at Foothills. So for Foothills Regional Housing, I'm the Chief Operations Officer, and I oversee the compliance and asset management of our properties. I also am involved with some of the items with like HCV and with development. I just kind of do really a little bit of everything here at our agency. At the end of the day, I really think I was actually kind of chosen by housing to be in housing. I think about it all the time, and I'm like, how did I end up here working in affordable housing? And I love it, and I wouldn't have it any other way. But it definitely picked me. I wasn't looking, and I had actually happened to get a call at the last agency that I worked at from the Director of Human Resources, who actually asked me if I was interested in learning a little bit more about their company. I was like, yeah, absolutely. And from there, they hired me. It was actually a very quick, fast process, probably the fastest hiring process I've ever been part of. And there, it was just like I've been kind of like running, and I haven't stopped running since I've been in the industry, and I've since transferred, obviously, and I'm now at Jefferson County Housing Authority, Foothills Regional Housing. So, but yeah, I was definitely kind of picked by housing, I think.
So you mentioned housing picked you. Tell us a little bit about the industry itself. Again, I'm a hospitality vet. We're going to get back to what you did with the Broadmoor and why, but tell the listeners what is affordable housing and what makes that unique to all the other housing out there.
So with affordable housing, I mean, my unique perspective on affordable housing is it's nowhere different than conventional housing. Okay. The only difference is obviously we are just providing housing options for folks who don't have income a lot of other Americans. I mean, so we're really providing housing for a lot of the frontline employees. And so the folks that are working tirelessly at, nursing homes or working at Walmart, anywhere on the front lines really is what we're providing housing options for, even teachers. And not only that, just, first-time parents and folks that are just out on their own for the first time too. So it's really kind of a baseline, I think, for a lot of our residents, either a baseline or it's a second chance for them to really try to rebuild their personal wealth and who they are, and focus on the items that they find important, so that they can better their lives without being burdened by $2,000 a month rent. And so affordable housing, I think, really offers it's a huge impact to our economy, because a lot of these folks also, they can't afford to buy gas sometimes to drive several miles a day to work. I mean, I've been in their shoes many times. Sure. When I was right out of high school, and you had to pick sometimes between eating some ramen or paying for your gas to get to work. And unfortunately, a lot of the times, like, gas to get to work would take precedent. And so the fact that we're able to offer people housing in areas of opportunity where there are jobs, I think is huge. I mean, we just finished a development last year up in Evergreen, and have provided, and most of our housing there is going to a ton of our frontline workers. We're providing housing to teachers and people who were, complaining about having to drive miles and miles and miles a day to get to work. So I think that's a really exciting thing for me.
Yeah, I visited your property in Evergreen a few months ago before I started working with you guys, and beautiful property, and the developments they're a lot nicer than I had expected, and I've seen some of the work that Foothills has done and some of the other agencies here in town, and it is a great. I see what you mean. It's unique, but it's not special. It's unique for the people that need the opportunity, as you said it. So you obviously have a heart for others. I'm going to say it's part of your upbringing. It's part of what you studied, or it could be a little bit from your time in hospitality. So tell us, where does that servant heart come from?
I think a lot of it really kind of comes from my upbringing. So my mom actually has always been very involved with the various religious organizations that we have been part of. I mean,
Sure.
we kind of bounced around a little bit there, but she's always been very involved. And since I was a kid, she actually always had me kind of working alongside her. And then, when I had graduated high school and then moved out, I think a huge part of that was going to work in the hospitality industry, because I think that at that point you really learn how to not say no to people, but you learn how to maybe provide alternative solutions. And you really figure out how to problem solve, and always thinking about, the customer in mind, and not just the external customers, but the internal customers. And so your coworkers and everyone else that you work with on a day-to-day basis, including vendors. And that's kind of where a lot of my mindset comes from is like, where are they at? How can I help them, and what can we do? And just trying to constantly look from their perspective with those types of solutions. So.
Well, I love what you said about learning to find alternate solutions, learning to not just say no. And what you said really resonated with me. I had 8 years with Marriott Hotels, and I met Mr. Marriott Sr. before he passed. I was a bellman. Before you were born, probably in 1983. I wasn't sure exactly when you were born, but maybe, anyway, doesn't matter. But I was a bellman at a big resort, and he walked up, and somehow we started a conversation, and the secret came up. And he said, the secret to this industry, Greg, is the people living in the house need to get along and understand how to take care of one another. And then the people visiting the house, the hotel, will then have an opportunity to have a great stay. And I love what you said around we need to take care of the internal customers as well as the external. And I believe you do that there at Foothills as well, yeah?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I actually think of my role kind of as a support role primarily. We all look at our org charts and whatnot, but at the end of the day, like my entire department and all of my teams that I work with, my only function is to make sure that they're able to function and function well. And if there is a issue, the issue primarily is my issue, because at some point or another, we put together a process or a procedure that didn't make sense and isn't able to operate without either myself being heavily involved or someone else being heavily involved. Which is just not a way to run a department. And so that's kind of, I think, as any leader, even in the hotel industry, I think that they all really kind of thought, they are the support function, and that is how anyone is able to really operate.
Yeah, no, and that's where that servant heart comes from. You nailed it without saying it, in my opinion. A leader is there to support or serve, take care of, acknowledge their followers, their team, as you said. And again, it's at this point in your career, it seems like you've figured a lot of this out. A lot of people twice your age, 50% older than you, just haven't gotten it. And the reason I wanted you on the show today is you seem to understand the nuances of leadership. In my opinion, it's not that difficult if you want to be a great leader. So talk to me a little bit about, tell the audience what have you learned from watching other good leaders, and what have you taken from him or her, and then vice versa, what have you decided to leave behind because what he or she was doing, saying, exampling just wasn't for you?
Well, I'm going to start by saying that I think the biggest thing that I've learned just in general over my short lifespan that I've had is that it's okay to have new innovative thoughts or new ways of doing things, but to always be open and teachable. I think that a lot of the times, folks like, that are my age or just millennials in general, we just want to go, 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 and we want to solve, 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 and we want things to be our way or the highway. And we don't ever actually stop and try to understand a process to its fullest or why things are done the way they are. And, I've really learned to kind of take in all of these fascinating people that I'm surrounded by that have been in industries for 20, 30, or 40 years and have a wealth of knowledge and figure out, why do you have your job? Why have you had it for so long? What have you been doing? And then understanding those processes. And so what I've really, really learned too, though, is that they've always even remained open and teachable and trainable and haven't, decided, oh, it's my way or the highway. And then I've also had the managers who have been more, it is my way or the highway, and those relationships haven't lasted as long, and I haven't, I never was able to grow into that, and I don't think a lot of other staff members would have been able to grow into that either. But I've been very fortunate, the last few years to be able to be under various managers and all of them be extremely open to new ideas, but at the same time, I think that they've been comfortable mentoring me in a way because they see that I'm also open to listening to why things are the way they are, and collaborating with them. So I think that that's the big thing right there too, is collaboration. So
yeah, collaboration and listening. A guest on the show prior to you, I asked him the same question I'm going to ask you, and I said, what's the key to great leadership? Just narrow it down for us. What do you believe is the key to great leadership? And he said one thing. Listen. As leaders, we don't need to, but we should want to listen to the people following us, our team, and even those that aren't even in our organization. And you seem to have adapted the importance of listening. And I call it listening with your eyes too. You seem to be a very present young man, and you're obviously very important to Foothills. So when you're speaking, people are listening, and I can guess you're also looking to see who else is listening so you can collaborate. But I don't want to put listening as what you would say is most important. What would you say to the 30 plus or somethings out there that are listening, pardon the pun, what would you say, Zach, is the 2 or 3 things that make a great leader a great leader?
So I would say, the one thing that I tell my team all the time is a one word too. It's heart, and it's to hear, to emphasize, to acknowledge, to repeat whatever it is that you are hearing, and then to take action. And I think that all of those, it's a process of a relationship, essentially, of building that trust, building that foundation, understanding problems, acknowledging if there is a problem or acknowledging if there's a difference, and then taking action, and actually closing it and bringing it to the finish line. And I think that that's really kind of what makes leadership and leaders so important is that they have to have a heart, not just have a heart for what they're doing, but obviously also what each of those letters kind of stand for, and understanding the value behind actually hearing people and empathizing with them and acknowledging situations, and then obviously repeating them so that people understand that you understand what they're talking about, and then that actual follow through. So
I understand you're parts of other organizations. You've obviously invited yourself in, or you were invited to get in, and you've rose to a leadership position or on some advisory boards. Tell us about those organizations and really why did you want to get involved in these? What was important to you, Zach, to be present there?
So, and I think that that's another thing that's been kind of interesting. I've always thought, like, how did I end up on this board or that board? And it's like a genuine thought that I have all the time. And I've actually been very fortunate to have some awesome people in my life who have either recognized that I have a different way of thinking or a different way of doing things, and have either invited me to be part of something or have, actually taken me and been like, hey, we're going to do this together. And so I am on 3 different boards. I am the president for the Colorado NARO, so that's the National Association of Real Estate Officials, and that, we do a ton of work with affordable housing. Also on the advisory board for CHAFA Reach, which focuses on education for our folks that actually work in affordable housing and helping them understand how to do their jobs a little bit better, easier, or also then teaching us how to do our jobs better and easier sometimes. And then I'm also on the Mountain Plains NARO board as the vice president of member services. And in all those scenarios, again, like it wasn't ever anything that I had applied for. I've always been interested in it. Education's always been extremely important to me, not from a college degree standpoint, but from a on-the-job training, because that's kind of at the end of the day, what really matters is what does it take to actually do the job? And when you're the boots on the ground, what can I impart to other people in my position so that they understand what property managers or directors of property management are having to deal with every day? And how can I also help them make their jobs a little bit easier so that they can support their team? And I've really loved being part of the advisory board for CHAFA. Colorado NARO has been different. So I was default on the Colorado NARO board from my Mountain Plains position. Okay. And I had no idea that I was going to be president. But the president that was, his term started in 2019, I believe, had moved. And so then the senior vice president moved into the president role and selected me to be the SVP. And in 3 months, she moved. And so I was like, okay, this was just a very odd,
Here comes Zach. Yeah. That's awesome. I see a lot of myself in you. I see a very curious individual with a big heart. I know great things are already happening to you. My ask is that you share with the other folks that are listening, what's 1 or 2 things that people your age could be, not should be, but could be doing to be better human beings, to be better to one another, and for purposes of this show, to be better leaders? And what do you say to them other than what you've already shared? Because I believe your words and your actions are great examples of the future leader, Zach. That's why you're here, and I really appreciate you sharing your heart. A lot of people are going to grow because of the show. But for you to be intentional with us for the next couple of minutes and just speak to your generation as to what we could be doing better if we really wanted to.
So I think I would start by saying slowing down and taking in everything that's around us. There's so much going on. Right now, I think a big conversation has been diversity and inclusion and equity. And my age I think my generation is not always that diverse and isn't always that equitable and isn't always very inclusive. I think that they're very exclusive and they're very focused on themselves or the groups that they associate themselves with. And I have found that when you slow down and you kind of take in your surroundings and look at everybody, look at everything happening around you, and just kind of take inventory of where you're at compared to where other items are at, or things or people, and then really seeing, I guess, what needs to be done differently in the world to make it a little bit better. I mean, again, just slowing down and talking to people and asking somebody how their day is instead of just walking in and going straight to your office. I think when I really kind of started working in the corporate world, I was really bad at thinking I was so busy, busier than everyone else, at least. And I wasn't. I mean, now I know, I get very passionate about the amount of work that my team does and that my entire organization does. I know that every single one of them are extremely busy, but I also know every single one of them also need somebody to say hi to and somebody to say, hey, how are you doing? Or, hey, do you need coffee? Or, what can I do for you? There's not enough of that. And especially from my generation, I don't think there's enough of that. I think that sometimes, and I can say from personal experience, we can be a little selfish and can be just too focused on our goals to look at everyone else's goals, which then stunts our growth, because then we're not looking at an organizational perspective of what we can do to grow with people. You can't be a leader if you're not growing with other people, because then you're just leading yourself and you're not leading anyone else. And so, yeah, definitely slowing down and taking in everything around you. The other item that I would say that would just make I would say, gosh, it's thoughtfulness still. It's being thoughtful and really actually being a person of your word and taking it to the end. And if you tell somebody, hey, I'm going to take you to lunch because I care about you, or I want to thank you for doing something, actually take them to lunch. Don't just do it to gain any type of like social standing with a team. I've seen that happen a lot with a lot of teams where folks will just say, hey, I'm going to do this for you because they're trying to like gain influence over a team of people, but actually just doing it out of being a genuine human. Showing up and giving somebody some donuts and bringing them breakfast and being like, hey, I appreciate you, or just even dropping them off at the office and not even like letting them know that you brought them. I just think that those types of things really set the tone for people's day. And then, oh my gosh, it was right on the tip of my tongue on the last thing. Oh my God, I might have to like loop back to you on that. It was right there, but.
Well, I would just, while you're thinking about that, I again want to notice and acknowledge your maturity and your thinking and where your heart is, because I'm going to agree with the fact that all of us, especially your generation, could benefit from slowing down. We could benefit, all of us, again, could benefit by, instead of being so quick to assess or quick to judge, if it may allow me to use that word, and that's something that even as a 58-year-old man, I'm still working on, to notice everything around us and take it all in and then speak. It's almost like listening, but with your eyes, so to speak, meaning you're bringing it in, and then you're going to either ask a question or now you're prepared to make a statement. I love your comment about inclusion. I believe we are exclusive, unfortunately, too much. And I do appreciate the fact that you say yes, and some of us can be too selfish. And it's hard to be serving when you're always taking care of yourself. It's hard to be selfless when you're always selfish, and I'm not saying always, but what you have suggested that all of us, especially your generation, consider is profound, and appreciate it. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to have you on your show. Your perspective, Zach, could help a lot of other people save hundreds of hours and create other relationships with the most important resource we have, which you also mentioned, people. It's hard to have a relationship with other people when you're only focused on a relationship with yourself, and just love the way you articulated it.
Thank you. And my last thought was actually to stop being afraid. In a lot of scenarios, I have found myself too struggling with, being afraid to speak up because out of either fear of rejection or out of fear of being told that I was wrong. And I've learned over the years that it's okay if you say something and you're wrong or you're not, potentially educated on a subject, because then you can actually learn about it. And when you're too afraid to break out of that molding and you're just agreeable, it doesn't do anything for you. And I think, again, it goes to us being, know-it-alls sometimes, or trying to think that we're know-it-alls. I would love to be, I would love to know everything, but I don't. I try to surround myself with people that know more than I do so that I can learn from them. And also, just not being afraid of also having people that work with you that know more than you do. I know in a lot of scenarios, and I can say again, from being like a younger manager a few years back, I would definitely be intimidated if I had hired somebody that knew more about compliance than me, or knew more about different programs than me, but actually surrounding yourself with those people and taking them in so that you can actually focus on obviously expanding your knowledge, but just building kind of a better tomorrow for yourself, your family, and your team.
It's again, you're spot on with your vulnerability, your courage to hire people that are better than you are or know more than you are. I'm not saying you're doing this as you speak, but I know what you do there, and I know some of the people you surrounded yourself with, and it's such an intelligent way of building a team, because we don't need to know it all. We don't need to be the smartest person in the room leader. We need to assemble a team that can work together cohesively, collaboratively, and make it happen, make what we want to have happen. And what I see in you too, Zach, is someone who allows people to be themselves. You allow them to speak up. You encourage them to speak. Nothing's going to be held against them, and you're encouraging them to learn. And again, my experience has told me after meeting with hundreds of people since I got into this work is being an example is the most important thing of being a great leader.
Definitely agree with you on that. And I mean, echoing your thoughts on letting people talk, I can't say how many times my team and I wouldn't say that it happens frequently, but there's disagreements, and it would be so ignorant of me to say, oh, don't be afraid to speak your mind, because I want to be able to speak my mind, and then shut them down. I can't. I mean, just the other week, I had a disagreement with one of my direct teammates, and they were like, "Oh no, this isn't right. I don't agree. And I'm like, "Why don't we agree?" And we kind of had a little spat, but at the end it was like, "Hey, are we okay? Okay, good. Now we can progress and move on to the next part of our relationship, but also, solving a problem." And so, just really, I guess, encouraging everyone around you to also speak is a big thing, because some people are afraid to advocate for themselves too. And I think that when you advocate for them and really stand with them, it helps them in those types of scenarios. So yeah. I definitely echo that thought on letting people talk.
Well, you example the way it is. You example listening, they'll listen, and how you speak with being courteous and inclusiveness. Yeah, the other people will. And I love an opportunity to disagree, because at that time that's where passion comes from. As long as we're being kind and considerate with our disagreements. I mean, not every husband and wife, not brothers and sisters. I mean, heck, you have hundreds of relationships we could talk about if we had time. But you mentioned invitation. It seems like you've been invited to participate. You've been invited to lead. You've taken those opportunities and made the best of them. I'm going to give you another invitation. I'd like to invite you to consider joining us on stage next year, because it's a 5-year program. I'd like for you to join us on the big stage if you'll have us, and gives you 370 days to consider it, but to add that to your list of invitations. But I see a lot of promise in you, Zach, and people that are following you are going to be following you for a long time. That's just one man's prediction.
Thanks, Greg. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate you. I appreciate having Zach Guerin from Foothills Regional Housing on the show today. Again, this is Greg Aden at Servant Leadership, and have a great day, and God bless.